Hey everyone, happy Friday. It's time for another episode in our walk through the Bible, one book, one verse at a time. Now today we're looking at the book of Ezra, and this marks a shift from kind of explaining the reasons for the exile in the history as we walked through 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. These history of the time of kings where we see kind of the fortunes of Israel and Judah grow as they follow God, but then also plummet as they walk away from Him and as they don't follow His instructions. Eventually leading to the exile of the 10 northern tribes of Israel and then also of Judah. Now, the history that follows after that time frame, so Ezra and Nehemiah, really only deals with the return of the people of Judah. And for the most part, this is a good story. It's a story of the return. It's a story of a king of Persia feeling as though God is telling him to rebuild the temple. It's a story of those who are there being able to lay down the foundations, and then there's some opposition from those who are around them that don't want the temple rebuilt, and then there's some rediscovery of that initial requirement to rebuild the temple, and then also some extra support to have it happen, and then there's the temple is rebuilt, and the people are able to celebrate the Passover even back in the land with the temple rebuilt. It's this image of restoration, but it's also an image of how the problems continue in this new land. Right after the temple is rebuilt and the people celebrate Passover, Ezra shows up from Persia, and he comes with the law, and he comes as a teacher of the law, as a prophet, and he recognizes almost immediately that the people haven't been following God's instructions. Now, the example that is given is kind of the prime example that is used, and that's the one of marrying foreign wives. That the idea is that these families aren't keeping themselves pure for God, and not necessarily from a genetic standpoint, but more about as people who actually follow. I mean, one of the main problems that is assigned to King Solomon is that not only he married foreign wives, but he also allowed these foreign wives to distract him from God. They would bring their own practices into the marriage, and there wasn't that unity of being one family following the one true God. And so Ezra recognizes right away that, look, guys, this isn't all sunshine and roses. But the main import, I think, of the book of Ezra particularly is that the people are returning from exile, that God's promise to bring them back has happened, and that they can actually celebrate the Passover there in the promised land again. And so this is the key verse that I think. It comes from Ezra chapter 6, verse 22. For 7 days they celebrated with joy the festival of unleavened bread, the Passover, because the Lord had filled them with joy by changing the attitude of the king of Assyria. So he assisted them in the work on the house of God, the God of Israel. So they're able to spend a full 7 days, the full time, in order to celebrate the Passover. And they do it back in the city of Jerusalem, the capital that they had longed for. And they do it back in front of a rebuilt temple as well. Now, it's not perfect and it's not the best, and there's still a lot that has to happen yet, both within the people's hearts and within what everything else is going on. But it's a promise, or it's an example of God coming through on His promises for His people. And so it's an encouragement then for us as well. An encouragement to trust that God will come through on His promises for us. Sometimes it will take way longer than we expect, but we can be absolutely certain that He will be good to us.